Hey, Karen.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome to That Sugar Show with me, Karen Thomson, and the amazing nutritionist Emily Maguire. Today we are so excited to have the gorgeous dietitian Cassie with us from Healthy Simple Life. So Cassie, widely known as Dietitian Cassie, is a registered licensed dietitian and founder and CEO of Healthy Simple Life, an organization that focuses on helping people identify the root causes of health issues that healthcare practitioners often overlook. She and her team of registered dietitians provide evidence-based nutrition coaching in person, online, and over the phone. Food, they help people find freedom from diet and chronic health conditions so they can live their life to the fullest without counting calories or points ever again. We are so excited to have Cassie with us. And I'm going to hand over to Emily.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for that introduction. I'm very excited about this interview today. So anybody that follows myself or Cassie on social media probably saw that I got to spend some time with Cass this year in the beautiful Minneapolis area with her. She is pretty much one of my go-to people in this field. So we're going to be talking everything with around sugar addiction, cravings, etc. So Cass, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the nice introduction, Karen. Yeah, it's just great to be here. Sugar addiction is a personal topic for me because for so much of my life I was addicted to sugar, and I never thought it was something I could overcome. I just thought it was a flaw, with me, and it was genetic, and it was just part of me. So it's a really powerful part of my story, and it's something that I'm just so excited that we get to help so many people. My team of dietitians and I help so many people overcome sugar addiction, and I'm excited to share a lot of those strategies with you today.
Amazing. So before we get into the kind of what people can do and what they can't do, you obviously touched upon really briefly that you have a bit of a personal, struggle with sugar addiction, etc. Do you mind just kind of taking us through what that kind of was, what it looked like for you, and that type of thing?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to share that. So I'm a former sugar addict and junk food junkie, and I drank soy milk lattes and ate 100-calorie packs of cookies like they were going out of style, and my energy levels were non-existent. And this was all when I was in school to be a registered dietitian. So I was doing everything that I thought I was supposed to be doing, everything that I was learning. I was studying nutrition and exercise science, and it just didn't make sense to me that I was feeling worse and having these compelling cravings for sugar. I mean, I simply couldn't not think about food, particularly sugar. So what happened is, as I gave into the sugar addiction, because when your brain is constantly telling you that you need something, you eventually, give into it. At least most of us do. That promoted a lot of inflammation in my body and caused a lot of bloating and weight gain. And the freshman 15 became my reality. And I got to my lowest point and my highest weight when I was in school to be a dietitian, when I was exercising and eating right, and I was just diligently following everything I was being taught. I just kept getting unhealthier. So fast forward, it wasn't really until after I graduated and became a registered dietitian that I discovered the power of real food and high-quality supplements. And to say the least, that changed my life. No more being consumed with thoughts of food, no more dragging by with low energy levels and having trouble sleeping, no more counting calories, no more low-fat diets. And, today I'm probably in the best shape of my life, and I'm eating more calories and fat than ever before. And I never thought any of that was possible. Like I said, I just believed a sugar addiction was part of my identity, and I definitely thought that fat would have made me fat as well. So those were all lies, and today I feel confident and in control of my sugar addiction, and I never even tried to, lose the weight that I had gained. All of that had just happened naturally as I stopped depriving my body of healthy food and healthy fat, actually. And healthy food, I guess, in general, because I was just eating so much sugar, and of course high quality supplements. So today that's what I'm passionate about. Is it still baffles me how deceptive my education to become a registered dietitian was. When I learned the truth, I really felt deceived and frustrated and embarrassed for all the time that I'd spent kind of, telling other people what I had learned in dietitian school. And that's why I embarked on a journey to really share the truth and the power of real food and healthy fat and how healing it can be. with other people. So that's what my team of dietitians and I do, is we use a real food, functional medicine-based approach, and that really means identifying the root cause and then healing your body from the inside out. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that ties into sugar addiction and, overcoming those compelling sugar cravings. But that's basically why this is such a personal topic for me, because for so much of my life I was addicted to sugar. And I don't know if anyone can relate, but I'll just never forget the time that I ate the entire container of my roommate's frosted sugar cookies when I was in school to be a dietitian. And I just remember I think this stands out in my mind so much because, here I was in school to be a dietitian and she wasn't. And I thought I'd sneak just one cookie, and it ended up being, the entire container. And it was so embarrassing and shameful for me to have to confess that I was responsible for her missing cookies. Not to mention the gut-wrenching indigestion that goes with it too. And situations like that just were, not rare occurrences for me in the past, and they continued to get worse. And I just remember it never feeling like a choice. It was like when the vending machine calls your name and you have no other option and you have to go straight there. And that's really what addiction is. So that's why I'm passionate about it, and that's my story.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing it. And I think it's always a lot easier, you can relate if you obviously have that kind of personal sort of journey with it. But one thing, so obviously you were trained kind of very similar to me. It was all about the low-fat mantra, the calories in equals calories out, and when you're taught at sort of a university level that that's the way, you obviously, take it as gospel, and that's the truth isn't there. So how did you actually come to sort of finding this way, to sort of the sugar-free and that type of thing? Sort of, was there a journey from there, or sort of how did you come around it?
I think it was a multitude of things. It never really made sense to me when I was in school to be a dietitian that it was healthier to eat, say, a 100-calorie pack of Oreo cookies, but not an avocado, even though an avocado is real food, but it contains, 2.5 times the amount of calories as the cookies. Like, none of that really made sense to me. And then as I was kind of going through my journey and feeling worse and worse and gaining weight and, having these compelling sugar cravings every single day, I think I just started to step back, and you kind of sometimes have to just step back and look at what you believe in your heart. And I just remember thinking, real food seems to make sense, yet we're telling people to deprive themselves of it. And, calories, we were learning all these equations to calculate how many calories a person needs based on this, or this. And even as I started my career in a hospital setting, I would see, patients come in over and over after reducing their amount of calories, and they were gaining weight. And actually, I should mention that the hospital that I worked in was with people with special needs. So they were actually hooked up to tube feeding, so we could control exactly how many calories they were taking in. So it's not like they were lying about what they were eating. I knew exactly what they were having, and they'd come in at 1,500 calories a day. The dietitian would reduce it to 1,200. They'd come and see me, and they'd be down to 600 or 800 calories a day, which, is cruel, really. We were starving them, yet their weight would continue to go up. So this is where, this was a point in my life where I just thought, it doesn't make sense. And then actually I had a little bit more of a personal story when my dad, he actually underwent a double bypass heart surgery, and it was a very scary point in my life. I remember not knowing if my dad was going to make it or not. And he was healthy. He was running a race when he felt chest pain. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He ate really healthy, whole grains and cereal every day for breakfast, and didn't eat dessert or sugar. And the dietitian in the hospital at the time told him to basically keep doing what he was doing. Keep avoiding butter, keep using margarine, eat more whole grains, keep skipping dessert. And I just thought, there were just several of these moments when I thought, well, that doesn't even make sense. Like, he's already doing that. How is that going to he's already been doing that. How is that going to make him healthier? So there were just, I think, multiple times in my life where I really stepped back and just thought, this doesn't make sense to me. And then when I actually delve into the research a lot more, I saw that there really wasn't a lot of research there to support, low-fat dieting. And sure, calorie counting can work to some extent, but most people end up gaining all the weight back anyway when they finally eat again, because their body needs food at some point. So when I really took a look at it, the information I was taught in school, this textbook information was like, 50 years old, and it wasn't working, and everyone was getting sicker and fatter. So that's when I really took a step and kind of looked at the research and realized that maybe fat's not that bad for me. And that was a first point for me, is when I started adding in healthy fat. Because I would say I was following a low-fat diet, even if it was kind of unintentionally. A lot of things I was buying were, low-fat and fat-free, because that's what was out there. And when I started eating fat again, not even a lot, I mean, we're talking adding a tablespoon or two at every meal and snack, I started feeling amazing. And when you think of it, your brain is over 60% fat. So when you're depriving your body of that macronutrient, it's no wonder you're not going to be able to think clearly. And it's no wonder I was having these sugar cravings, that my energy levels were low all the time. So that, even that alone, that one step of just adding in healthy fat, avocados, nuts, seeds, coconut oil, coconut milk, even cheese for me at the time was a pretty big deal, especially because I could tell just how much more clear I could think, and I noticed my sugar cravings disappearing the more fat that I consumed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a very nice segue to make that on there, Cass. But we've obviously, so this is Sugar-Free September. We're now on day 9. And we've had over like 8,000 people now on board with us, come from all different sort of, ways and what their diet was like before. The consistent message, obviously, what we're getting just now is the sugar cravings, the withdrawals that everyone's kind of going through at the minute. So just to kind of switch it up a gear, now looking at what you would do with kind of individuals. So first of all, sugar cravings. Why are they happening? Why do we have them?
So a lot of people will think that it's just about willpower. So I want to start out by saying that sugar cravings are real and they're not about willpower. Sugar cravings are a biochemical response in your brain. So for too long we've been told, just give it up. And then when we try, we ended up giving in and having another cookie or potato chip, and we can't stop, and we get back into that spiraling, spiral of shame, I guess you could call it. So sugar has the same effect on the brain as cocaine. It triggers that same reward center as that dangerous drug, which clearly tells us that it's addictive. So what happens when you get a sugar craving, it's a biochemical response in your brain, and it's due to not having enough of the brain chemicals to prevent this from happening, or it's due to having low blood sugar levels. So when we say we just don't have enough willpower, it's really failing to address that biochemical factor. So you have these brain chemicals that they're called neurotransmitters, is kind of the fancy word for them. And if your body's not producing enough of them, you're going to have cravings for sugar. So that's reason 1 that I mentioned. And the reason 2 was when your blood sugar levels drop really low, your brain is really, really smart. And your brain knows that all it needs to bring your blood sugars back up is sugar. So that's why, say you eat you don't eat for a long time, or maybe you eat a meal that's really high in carbohydrate, like let's just use that bowl of cereal, with skim milk and a glass of orange juice and a piece of toast, for example, with margarine, right? That would be like a carb bomb waiting to go off in an hour or two, because what it is, that meal is mostly carbohydrate, and all carbohydrates turn to sugar in your body, so it raises your blood sugar levels, and then what goes up must come down, so you crash, and you wonder why an hour later you feel like you're hungry, so then you have more sugar, whether it be that mocha at the coffee shop or a muffin or maybe even a banana. Any of those are sugar, so you raise your blood sugars again, and then they drop. And this is why a lot of people will crave sugar all day long when I call it riding the blood sugar roller coaster. So that would be one reason why you would get sugar cravings throughout the day. And that's why I mentioned the healthy fat, is because what fat does is it acts as kind of like a buffer, and it slows down the absorption and assimilation of sugar in your bloodstream. So say you had like half of that banana and you add in a couple tablespoons of almond butter, that would be a really good way to keep your blood sugar levels more stable so you don't hit that low. So that's why I think a great first step is making sure you're adding in healthy fat to try to keep your blood sugar levels more stable so you're not riding that blood sugar roller coaster all day long.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So is there any other kind of tips or anything like that you would say for helping, people with these kind of cravings and how you can deal with the withdrawals?
Yeah. So I think the other key there, kind of to finish my thought on the neurotransmitters, is you want to support the production of neurotransmitters. Those are those brain chemicals that determine whether or not you have sugar cravings. So if you try to break free of your cravings with food alone by adding in the healthy fat, you can definitely have some success. That was the first step for me. Ultimately, when you're someone who is addicted to sugar or someone who's really sugar sensitive, your body won't completely be craving free if you aren't supporting it with the nutrients that it's actually lacking on a long-term basis. And this is kind of something that I learned the hard way, and I finally realized that I still couldn't control my sugar cravings completely with food alone, and that's where key supplementation comes in. So there's really just 2 supplements that I think are really important. I mean, there's a lot of supplements that are really important, but when it comes to sugar cravings, there's 2 key supplements that can be beneficial in preventing them. And the first one is L-glutamine. So people may have heard of L-glutamine because it's the most abundant amino acid in your body. And the way that it helps with sugar cravings is it supports the production of those neurotransmitters. And it's great because it helps reduce any inflammation that sugar may have caused by healing the lining of your intestinal tract. which also means less sugar cravings. So generally what we recommend is for those who experience frequent sugar cravings, about 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of L-glutamine before your meals. So when we're working with a client, we usually start out by having them take that, before all 3 meals, because they're going to notice, a really huge reduction in their sugar cravings when they do that. And that would be part 1, and then part 2 would be probiotics, because probiotics support your gut by replenishing the good bacteria and crowding out the bad bacteria. And that's where your brain chemicals are made, are in your gut. So these 2 supplements are really tying back into gut health, because gut health has such a huge impact on your brain health and your brain chemistry and that biochemical response. So when it comes to probiotics, you can definitely get those from food as well, like sauerkraut, kombucha, miso, those fermented foods. And we find that for people with sugar cravings who are very sugar sensitive, taking a high quality probiotic supplement can definitely make a big difference. So kind of my general recommendation again would be 3 to 6 capsules of a high quality probiotic, every single day. So maybe taking a couple of those with the glutamine before your meals, and just paying attention to your body and how it responds. And a lot of our clients notice within just a day or two that sometimes within an hour or 2 after taking these key supplements, that their sugar cravings go down.
And that's actually one of the questions that we had on social media, was the L-glutamine and the probiotics. So thanks for asking that without having to ask that.
Well, the other cool thing about L-glutamine is you can also use it like when you get a sugar craving. So you can use, I like prevention. I think prevention is best. So if we can prevent our sugar cravings by making sure we're eating enough healthy fat and supplementing to support our, producing those brain chemicals ahead of time, I think that's the best way to do it. That said, sometimes, we still get a pesky sugar craving, and eating a balanced snack might just not do the trick. So then that's when you can supplement with L-glutamine on the spot, and it really helps to curb that sugar craving. So it sounds a little crazy. I remember when I first learned about this and looked into the research, I was like, it sounds too magic, it sounds too good to be true. But it really does work, and we find, with hundreds of our clients that this does the trick every single time. And the cool thing about L-glutamine is you can get it in powder or capsule form. So the capsules can be really convenient for, throwing in your bag or having at your desk at work. And you can just crack one open and put it on your tongue when you get a sugar craving. Or if you have the powder, you can just lick your finger and put a little bit of the powder on your tongue, and it helps to curb that sugar craving.
Okay, so they can just take a small amount of the powder if they feel that craving kind of hitting. And they don't have to have eaten something before taking it. They can just take it before.
Yeah, if you get a sugar craving, you can just take it right there on the spot. For best absorption, generally I recommend 15 to 30 minutes before a meal is when you would take the probiotic and glutamine, kind of for prevention. And, if you're someone who struggled with sugar addiction like I did for so many years, this is something that you'll want to do for a while to really help heal from the damage that sugar can cause. Because I like to think of sugar as kind of like little pieces of glass that are almost like cutting up your insides, and that's what's happening when you're eating a lot of sugar. It's causing inflammation. That's why for me, I was so bloated, and I didn't even really realize it at the time until I started really reducing the inflammation in my body, and it went down. Like I said, that wasn't something I was intentionally trying to do, was try to lose weight or get rid of being bloated. It just kind of happened naturally because I was so inflamed from my sugar addiction. So that's something that can be really helpful, is focusing on healing that inflammation, and glutamine and probiotics are really, really healing. They're going to get to the kind of that root cause, and so they're not just good for preventing sugar cravings, they're also good for that healing process that we need to go through as a result of the damage that the sugar caused.
Yeah, perfect. And then just kind of coming on from there with it, how long do you think cravings generally last? Is it different from person to person, or depending on how addicted they were, or what have you kind of seen?
Yeah, I think it really depends. I think it depends on how many years you've struggled with it. I think it depends on, how much sugar you're actually eating and how inflamed your insides really are. And kind of like, everyone has different genetics. Some people have blue eyes, some people have brown eyes. I think some people are more prone to sugar addiction than others. That's why you can see one person can eat one cookie and say, I'm good, and then their spouse is like, I eat one and then I end up eating the whole container. How does he do that? So I think it depends a lot on the individual. And I also think what's interesting too is it's not just about the physical craving, right? I mean, we have clients that we help them get rid of these physical sugar cravings with the supplements and the healthy fat, and they'll say, what's odd? I actually don't physically crave sugar anymore, but but in my head, I still want it. I still think about it. When I'm stressed out, I still want a cookie, even though I don't even crave it. I don't even feel the physical craving. So there's that aspect of it as well. There's that emotional, habitual, we've used sugar as a crutch for so long. When you're a sugar addict, it's just what you've always turned to, usually in place of dealing with something else, like your feelings, or you're dealing with stress, or it might just be a habit. Every night after dinner, you just go have a bowl of ice cream, and you don't even physically crave it. It's just what you do. So we kind of have to like keep that in mind too and address that as well.
And do you think that side of it kind of helps when you reduce the sugar from your diet? Do you think it's a little bit easier to kind of take that on board?
I think it is. I think the reason for that is because you can think more clearly. When your brain is fogged with all the sugar that you're consuming every day, it's hard to even think clearly, and I can relate to that so well. I remember in school to be a dietitian, I was just distracted, and it was hard to focus, and it was hard to think, and that was when I got rid of my sugar cravings by eating more healthy fat. And when you eat more fat, it's pretty easy. It's pretty natural to eat less sugar and less carbs. And I kind of use those terms interchangeably because carbs turn to sugar in your body. But you can think more clearly. Your brain is made of mostly fats. When you're eating fat, you can think more clearly. So I think that by reducing the sugar and the carbs in our diet, and eating more protein and more healthy fat, we can think more clearly, and we can get past those sugar cravings a lot easier because of that. And I mentioned protein, not just healthy fat, because protein actually assists in the production of those neurotransmitters that we need in order to not crave sugar. So that's why I think protein and fat are important to have along with our carbohydrates. And I actually trademarked that. It's called PFC. I always talk about PFC balance, trying to make sure you're getting in enough protein and fat with your good carbs.
So what would you say would be like an ideal kind of snack to have if someone is having a bit of craving, or they just want that kind of something?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, snacks can be tough, and I don't think they have to be tough. They can just be kind of like mini meals. I mean, when I tell people, and I'm glad that you mentioned snacks, because a lot of times that's where we start with clients, is we actually add in snacks between their meals, because that can prevent those highs and lows in their blood sugar that might happen because they're only eating a few times a day. So when we add in snacks between the meals, it's a great way to keep blood sugar levels more stable. So, one thing you can do is just whatever you would normally have for lunch, kind of split it up a little bit so you're having part of it for your afternoon snack. One thing that I love for snack time or for meals is doing for my protein like canned chicken or canned tuna or canned salmon, and then I'll mix that with either olive oil or a good mayonnaise, and that'll be my fat. I'll probably use a couple tablespoons, and I usually put in a tablespoon or two of avocado in there as well, just kind of mix that in. And then I might, chop up a couple grapes and maybe some celery, some carrots, and that'll be my carb. So that's like a good PFC balanced snack. And I might put that in lettuce, kind of like a lettuce wrap, or just eat it right out of the Tupperware container with a fork. Or one thing that I think is really easy for people to do is a smoothie. If you can get a good protein powder, because they're not all created equal, a lot of them do have sugar and artificial sweeteners in them. So you want to get just a protein powder, just like a whey protein powder. We have one in our Real Food Vitamin store that we get imported from New Zealand because it's from grass-fed cows, so it's really high quality and there's nothing added to it. So you could use a scoop of protein, and then for your fat, maybe you do nut butter or avocado. Your carbs could be a handful of berries or half a banana or some spinach, and then you just blend it up, and that's an easy PFC balanced snack. Or if people don't like breakfast in the morning, that might be a good way to have breakfast on the run too. And it doesn't have to look crazy. I mean, basically your protein, you're looking for meat, fish, eggs, or protein powder. Those are the quality protein sources that I recommend. Your healthy fat, butter, coconut oil, coconut milk, nuts, seeds. If you can tolerate cheese, that's a good option as well. Heavy cream, if you can tolerate that. And then carbs, you're striving to get most of your carbohydrates from vegetables, ideally non-starchy vegetables, because they don't turn into a lot of sugar in your bloodstream. Those are, your kind of your salad vegetables, the ones that you could eat raw, your spinach and your cucumbers and cauliflower. And then, fruit, it kind of depends. People who are sugar sensitive oftentimes will notice that they'll get a pretty big surge in their blood sugar levels, which can cause, that crash and give them cravings if they eat a lot of fruits. You kind of want to be careful with fruit since it does turn into quite a bit of sugar in your bloodstream. So usually we recommend trying to focus more on the vegetables. So eating in PFC balance is just making sure you're including some good protein, and a couple tablespoons is probably a good place to start for healthy fat, along with your carbohydrates at your meals and snacks.
Awesome. And I think a lot of people will definitely find that very helpful because, like I said, it's day 9, and that's what we still, people are still experiencing these kind of withdrawals with it. So just
Yeah, and the
to
withdrawal, like you just mentioned, is important
Mhm.
because, I mean, it is something that can happen. I mean, we can feel headaches when we're giving up sugar because it's something that we've been used to for so long. So if you can get through that, though, the other side, it's not that far away, and it's so worth it. It's so worth feeling liberated and not tied down by something that you feel like is out of your control. So I know that can be hard. The withdrawal process can be really hard. That's where the supplements come in. I kind of like to think of them as hacks. Like, it's a great way to help your body through it. So I would really urge, if you're on day 9 and you're still struggling with the withdrawal and the sugar cravings, really adding in even just that probiotic and glutamine supplement is really going to help pull you through that time.
And I think that's the thing. It's what we've kind of been saying to people is it's getting past that kind of day 9, day 10, day 11, and really once you're past that, then you start, and seeing it. And some people are already. And then just as well, a lot of the comments that we've been getting, so just to take sugar away from the cravings and withdrawals, we've had so many people writing to us about how successful we've been so far with weight loss. So we've been getting people, they've lost 4, 5, 6 kilos, which is about 11, 12 pounds. And actually people writing to us saying, is this not, this can't be right, my scales must be wrong because this can't happen. So what's the kind of connection between sugar and weight loss?
Yeah, I think it really ties back into that inflammation that I was talking about. I kind of just mentioned it a little bit because sugar promotes inflammation. And like I mentioned, you can think of carbs and sugar as that kind of glass that's cutting up your vessels and causing inflammation. And inflammation is at the root of almost all weight gain. And most of us have it for one reason or another, whether it's because we've been consuming sugar or we're stressed out or using artificial sweeteners, poor food quality. But what happens is with chronic inflammation, the symptoms, they're not obvious like they are with acute inflammation, like when you stub your toe or get a paper cut. So a lot of people don't know they have chronic inflammation, and it can manifest itself in different ways from one person to another. It can show up as heart disease in one person or acne in another person. Usually weight gain is a result of having inflammation, because what happens is it's silently damaging your tissues, and it's always there, and your body is always fighting it. Your body sees inflammation as a fire, and your body wants to survive, right? That's its main priority is keeping you alive. So your body's always going to be prioritizing that inflammation before anything else. So even if your goal is, getting rid of sugar cravings and having energy and losing weight, if you have inflammation that is not only there, but that you're continually adding to by, say, eating a lot of sugar, then it's going to be pretty much impossible for your body to fix that and to focus on your goals before fixing that inflammation. So a lot of times that's what happens is when we take away what's causing the inflammation. In this case, it sounds like for a lot of people it's been sugar, then your body doesn't have to focus on healing that so much and can actually do what you want it to do. Because when you think about it, if you're continually putting something in your body that's causing inflammation, then your body is just continually trying to fight it, right? So if we take away that offending substance, then your body can actually do what you want it to do. And that's why a lot of people notice that they shed pounds right away when they get rid of the sugar.
And that's I think a lot of people why they've been taken so aback by it, but it has been amazing, so it's a really good kind of journey to see with it. So you touched kind of slightly on the artificial sweetener side. So we obviously are encouraging people to go sugar free, and we want people to get rid of this addiction to sugar. So we've obviously encouraged people to try and stay away from the artificial sweeteners, and could really to get this kind of sugar-free aspect going. So do you mind just talk a little bit around the artificial sweeteners and what you kind of your stance is on it and that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I used to think artificial sweeteners were a great alternative to sugar, kind of thinking they were like the lesser of the two evils when compared to sugar, since that's what I was taught in school, to be a dietitian. But the research just repeatedly shows that there's not really any good reason to support the notion that artificial sweeteners are, beneficial for us or worse, or I mean better for us than sugar. I think they're far from guilt-free. We used to think that kind of just because they were calorie-free. but they can actually cause weight gain and by promoting that inflammation in our body. So they can confuse your metabolism, really messing up your metabolism and slowing it down since your body doesn't recognize them. That's why they're calorie free, because your body doesn't really know what to do with them. So that actually just further promotes that inflammation, which is what sugar did, which is kind of one of the reasons why we want to get rid of sugar. And they can actually raise your blood sugar levels, kind of like we were talking about. You want to keep your blood sugar levels stable, okay, so this is another thing I didn't really mention and I didn't touch on when we talked about how sugar can cause weight gain. So another thing is when you take out some of the sugar and you balance your blood sugar levels more, what happens there, and this is how this part ties into weight loss too, is that you've got these two hormones called insulin and glucagon. And they can't coexist. It's one or the other. Insulin is usually referred to as our fat storing hormone, and glucagon is our fat burning hormone. So when you have stable blood sugar levels, your pancreas secretes glucagon, which burns fat for energy. So we want glucagon to be our best friend. Now, when our blood sugar levels, when we're riding that blood sugar roller coaster, your pancreas is constantly secreting insulin, which actually takes that sugar from your bloodstream and stores it as fat. So actually, sugar should be called fat. Fat doesn't make you fat. Sugar makes you fat. So insulin, we really don't want our pancreas secreting a lot of insulin. Also, that can lead to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. We just want our blood sugar levels to be stable so we can have glucagon being released and burning fat for energy. So that's another way that when you reduce your intake of sugar, and hopefully, adding in more protein and fat, your blood sugars are stable, so you can lose weight in that way because glucagon is working for you. Now, back to the artificial sweeteners, when they raise your blood sugar, that causes that release of that hormone insulin, which stores fat, which, again, that's kind of how artificial sweeteners can actually lead to weight gain, which is the opposite of what we thought. Another thing is they can wreak havoc on your gut, and that's where those brain chemicals are made. That's where your metabolism starts. So if you destroy your gut with artificial sweeteners, then it's actually setting you up for craving more sugar. So it's really kind of doing the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. So, I think that when we use artificial sweeteners, I don't think there's really a good reason to do that. And I think that one good alternative would be stevia. That's the one thing that, I feel more comfortable with. I don't think that it's kind of, you should go to the all you want to use stevia buffet. But I think that it can be a decent natural alternative because it's made from a plant and it's 30 times sweeter than sugar. And, the research is, showing that artificial sweeteners aren't good for us, but stevia is not artificial. My only concern for it is that with stevia is that it can increase our desire for sweetness. And that's one of the things we kind of want to get away from here. Because anytime you eat something really sweet, if it's 30 times sweeter than sugar, you might end up craving sugar a little bit anyway. So it's kind of one of those things where I think the less, sweet foods we put in our body, probably the better. And healthy fat, keeps us really, really full. So my suggestion would be to maybe use a little bit of stevia if you feel like you want something sweet, but try to really make sure you're increasing your intake of healthy fat too.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been trying to encourage people is maybe even titrate yourself off. If you feel like you need something, then using the stevia, but and try and get away from all the kind of diet drinks and everything that's got aspartame and all that type of thing in it. Pretty much for everything that you just explained for the reasons. So, Cass, we've had quite a few questions on social media, so I'm just going to go through some of them that they said. I think you've touched upon some of them, but one of the other ones that we've had, and I'm not sure, this might be an open-ended one, but someone asked about caffeine and sugar cravings. So is there a relationship between them? Is that something you know on, or is it just...
what's interesting? I've heard it go both ways. I've heard people say that when... because caffeine can kind of be an appetite suppressant for some people. So I've heard that some people use caffeine and they crave sugar less. But I've also heard from clients who will say that the more caffeine they drink, the more sugar they crave. So it might be more of an individualized response. I don't really have a recommendation either way. I mean, my thoughts on caffeine are, if you can tolerate it and it's not interfering with your sleep or making you too jittery, I think it's fine.
Okay, the next one that we have, so this person's asking, how do they manage at parties? Should they take their own food with them?
So here's my strategy for parties. So a lot of times people kind of have this idea that especially, you know, when it comes to a big holiday, that maybe they're not going to eat very much during the day, and then because they know they're going to stuff themselves at this party at night. So with my PFC balanced eating approach, what I'm recommending here is having snacks between your meals, eating throughout the day to keep your blood sugar levels stable so you're not riding that blood sugar roller coaster. And I would still stick with that when you're going to a party. So the benefit here is if you had a balanced snack right before you went to that party, which again is kind of opposite to how we normally think. We think we're going to a party and we're going to eat. But if you're not sure what's there and you're thinking that, you know, you're someone who's sensitive to sugar, you're someone who might be a little bit tempted, you don't want to go into that party with low blood sugar levels. Because what's your really smart brain going to do? It's going to say, where's the sugar? Where's the sugar? You know, even though you're thinking, I'm going to try to stay away from the sugar and not fight it, you're probably going to end up giving in. So I recommend actually having a PFC balanced snack before you go to that party so that your blood sugar levels are nice and stable, so you can walk in there confidently and you can, you know, look at the sugar. And also, if you have the glutamine and probiotic before you have that PFC balanced snack, and maybe load up even a little bit more. I mentioned for glutamine, I recommend like 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams before meals. Maybe you double that because you know that you're going into this party and you want to make sure that you've got enough of those built-up neurotransmitters in your brain so that you can resist the sugar. So that's what I do. That's my strategy. Is then I would go into that party feeling really confident. And when it comes to, you know, treats and cheats, because people will ask that a lot, you know, is it that you can't eat sugar at all? Can you have some? That's really individualized too. I mean, if you're at a party and you really want to eat one of the treats, I'm not saying that you can't. I think it's just important to know how it's going to affect you. If you're someone who has a bite and you know that it's going to cause you to binge for the next week, it might not be worth having that bite. But if you get to the point, like I got to in my life, where now I could have a bite of something and be fine, you know, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that because I wasn't kind of like in control of my sugar addiction. So I think it's kind of about knowing yourself and being really honest with yourself too, especially when you're in a situation like that. And then, of course, I would recommend try not to keep the focus on the food at the party. You know, if you had a snack ahead of time, maybe you don't need to go straight to the food when you get there and focus more on the social aspect and not make it all about food. Because for someone with a sugar-addicted mind, it is all about food. Like I mentioned when I was sharing my story at the beginning, you know, all I could think about was food. All I could think about was sugar and when I was getting my next fix. So it's kind of a shift in mindset when you're overcoming that sugar addiction that it's not all about sugar anymore, which is really liberating. And it's also a change that you kind of have to be intentional about keeping your mind in this place away from sugar.
And I think you actually just answered the final question that they had because they were talking around how do you cope with the triggers and the emotional connections. So if you think of birthday parties, if you think of cake, if you think of Christmas, it's chocolate, it's all of our celebrations are focused on, you know, something that we're saying avoid. So I think that comes back to kind of what you were saying. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that or how else people can cope with those triggers, you know, psychologically.
Yeah, I mean, it's really rewiring your brain. It's undoing something that you know, you've been kind of doing and ingraining for so long, and it's not easy. You know, it can be kind of the breakthrough process can almost be similar to drug addiction. I mean, you have to redo the way you do a lot of things in your life. And there are a lot of events revolved around food. I think that's why sugar is so sneaky. It's like this innocent addiction because we go out for ice cream and we have, you know, birthday cake, and every holiday revolves around food. So, and you're not, you know, you can't necessarily get away from all of that. I'm not saying to isolate yourself on every holiday, and you know that's just not fun either. So you kind of do have to at some point, you know, be comfortable entering that environment and comfortable with yourself and be in a place where you have strategies. And I think that's where knowing yourself, because it's different for everyone. There's different strategies that work for everyone, and maybe even working with a coach on this. I mean, that's something that my dietitian coaches and I do with our clients is we figure out, okay, let's find a strategy. What's going to work for you? I have one client who she decided that it's healthier for her to go tanning than to drive out to the grocery store and buy a bunch of sugar at 10 o'clock at night. So when she gets that urge, she goes tanning. And, you know, I have another client who actually really likes bubble baths, and that when she craves sugar, she'll take her glutamine and probiotic and have her PFC balanced snack, and she'll have a cup of tea in the bathtub. And I know for other people, that wouldn't do it. They'd be thinking about sugar the whole time. They'd be close to the kitchen, and they'd end up giving in. So it's very different for everyone. I think it's just about finding what works for you and basically establishing new habits and a new way of life that doesn't just revolve around sugar like it used to.
And I think that's what's key with it is individuality, and it's this that, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. Don't kind of beat yourself up. You know, for a lot of people, it's day 9 of trying to give up, you know, a 30-year when you're relying on something like that. And one thing we speak about in the program is what Karen obviously talks about is, you know, a 30-day self-care approach. And that's doing things, you know, to reward yourself, and things like taking a bath with a cup of tea to me just sounds wonderful because they know my love.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not. I think those things are really important. I think what that looks like is different for each person.
Yeah, so it's taking a walk, it's listening to music, it's painting your nails. It's something that's not based always around food, because that's what we think our reward, you know, and that's the other thing is our reward system is based on. So I think that's a really awesome way to kind of end it off there. I think you're completely right with saying about changing our mindset and our wiring. And just to kind of leave everyone with it, what would then be your top 3 kind of how to live a sugar-free lifestyle, would you say?
Like my top 3 tips?
Yeah.
I would say keeping those blood sugar levels balanced. I think, you know, PFC every 3 is kind of the way that we start with our clients. I don't think everyone needs to eat every 3 hours, but I think if you're someone addicted to sugar and you're riding that blood sugar roller coaster, it can be a really great place to start, is having protein, fat, and carbohydrate, you know, every 3 to 4 hours to try to keep your blood sugar levels stable. And then I think number 2 would really be focusing on real whole foods and just getting away from packaged, processed, refined foods, you know, quality protein from meat, fish, and eggs, healthy fat from nuts, seeds, avocados, butter, nutritious carbs that don't turn into a lot of sugar from vegetables, and some fruits. All of this will help, you know, keep you off of that blood sugar roller coaster by keeping your blood sugar levels stable. It's going to help you avoid the massive spikes in your blood sugar levels, which lead to sugar cravings. So eating real whole foods. And then number 3, which maybe this should be, you know, one of my first tips, definitely in my top 3, would be supplementing, because that's going to support that production of those neurotransmitters. And like I mentioned, you can try to do this with food alone, and if you're someone who's not very sugar sensitive, you might have some success. But if you are sugar sensitive, you're going to need all the support that you can get, and you probably already know that. You've probably already tried this on your own and realized that, you know, it's not something easy, and it's not something that maybe you've even had success with overcoming yet. So I would say supplementing with L-glutamine and a probiotic, and knowing too that not all supplements are created equal, so I would make sure that they're pharmaceutical grade is the term that I would look for. We have those in our Real Food Vitamin store because you actually have to go through a licensed healthcare practitioner to get pharmaceutical grade, but those are going to be the ones that you're going to see results with, and that you actually know what's in there is in there, and you're going to see the greatest effect from too.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on with us, Cass.
Thanks for having me.
It's been amazing, and I think there's been so many nuggets in there. I think Karen is one to walk in and ask a question. Maybe I can see her putting her hand up. Karen.
Thank you, Cassie. That was absolutely amazing and so enlightening and just like absolutely empowering and inspiring. Because we saw your before and after picture on the website, and there's a massive difference. So you really have walked this path. And that really gives people hope to see that you've managed to overcome it and you've changed your life. So I just wanted to mention to everybody that Cassie has a free ebook called Top 10 Tips to Bust Your Sugar Cravings, which you need to go and download now.
And I only gave you 3. You got to get the book for 10, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Cassie, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find me at dietitiancassie.com. There's no C's in dietitian, just a C in Cassie. And then my team of dietitians and I are at healthysimplelife.com, and our storefront of those high-quality supplements is rfvitamins.com.
Fantastic, guys. And then also head on over to thesugarfreerevolution.com, thesugarfreerevolution.com. We've got all the links and everything up there, a lovely bio on Cassie. So we are very excited that we've had you on the show, Cassie, and we look forward to doing some stuff together soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that both of you are doing. It was a pleasure to be on today.
Yay!
Thank you for
Bye,
being on. See you soon, guys.